Our next position group is, frankly, one that I would be shocked if we have varying grades here. It's a linebacker class, and we have talked extensively about this year's linebacker class, the class of 4 guys, and and we both gave that class an A. I think you gave an A plus, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. I think the first time I've ever done. I may have done that at a time in the past, but I believe that's the first time I've ever given out an A.
So A plus for Bryan on the 22 linebacker class. I gave him an A, and then you add in the 2-man linebacker class from last year, in Tuiamaka and Prince Kali, who are both also very, very talented linebackers. And I think my guess is that we're going to be the same. I gave this group an A. I don't. They had issues, obviously, going into last year's class because of the things that you mentioned earlier about choosing not to get linebackers, right?
In 2020, 0.
Yeah. And which just still blows my mind, but that's a different conversation.
They chose that after they missed out on all their top targets.
After other people chose not to come, they chose not to. Yeah. But a 2-man class was a great start. And then they bring in this 4-man class this year, and they just hit it out of the park, in my opinion, over the 2 years. They have restocked this linebacker room with elite guys, with guys that fill the need across the board that they need, right? I mean, they have a depth chart. Like we talked about this yesterday. 6 guys, they have 3 linebacker positions for the most part, right?
You could argue 4. I mean, but right now, I mean, they're a 3-3-5 or a 4-2-5.
Right.
It just
depends on how you look at it. But
either
either way,
they'll go 4 linebackers at times. But they're fine.
These 6 guys do a pretty darn good job of filling out that depth chart, and they fill it out with dudes, in my opinion. Yeah. So it's an A for me. I'm going to be shocked if you go a different direction, but maybe you will. Maybe you'll go A plus.
No, I went B minus. No, I went A. This look, it was needed because the last 2 years
Absolutely.
I went C plus. Last year we went C plus because I loved Prince Kali. I mean, you're talking about a top 50 to 100 player. Kahanu Kia was a bit of a question mark because we didn't even know if he was going to show up because he was adamant he was going to take a Mormon mission. And then he just decided to come, and then it was like he's going to come and then take a Mormon mission. I don't know how that whole thing's going to shake out, but he's not he's not an impact player, but a good depth guy, good special teams guy. That's exactly what he was this year. It was a really good special teams player for the Notre Dame this year. But gave some depth where they needed depth, and then you had like I said, Prince Kali was just a really, really good player. And the nice thing is when Marcus Freeman was hired, you look at Prince Kali and say, okay, your best defensive recruit fits the new defense. That's always the concern is you just sign this great player and he doesn't fit what they do. Yeah. Well, he does. Athletic, rangy, long. He fits the defense perfectly. And we started to see him get playing time already this year. I mean, he used a year of eligibility, first playing special teams, and then he started getting more playing time at linebacker late in the year when they had some injuries. So, but it was a C plus each of the last 2 years because in 2020 they signed 0. But we were still factoring in the previous class of Maris Luafau, J.D. Bertrand, Osita Ekwonu, and Jack Kaiser, which we really liked. It was another really good 4-man class. And so now you finally have a back-to-back class that you say, okay, now they're really rolling because they've signed 2 good back-to-back classes. And they needed numbers this year, and they needed length this year. They needed guys that could run and that are rangy this year. And they needed versatile players because that's what Marcus Freeman wants. Is he doesn't want guys that you're just a Mike and you can only play Mike. There's really only one guy in this group of both years that can really only fit into one position, and that's Junior Tuiamaka. Yeah. But even he could be a guy that can do some things that Bo Bauer's doing on third down, rushing the quarterback, things like that. Like even there, he still brings a little bit of flexibility, but he's probably not a Will. He's not a Rover. He's not a Sam.
He's not really an in-space guy for the most part.
He's a guy you see that running back, I want you to hammer that kid all game long. You see that guard, I want you to blow him up on the next 5 plays.
Old school playing a triangle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You remember what I texted you? You were at the Wisconsin game, and I texted you. I said, man, this would be a game where I would love to see Junior Tuiamaka.
Yes.
And there's going to be games like that on the schedule. And so I loved the 2-year grades. And it's like we're so excited about the 2022 linebackers. And it's kind of like some people have already kind of forgotten about Prince Kali.
Yeah, don't forget.
And as we said the other day, like Prince is you're going to have to battle Prince, right? Because, I mean, this is a kid that rushed for 1,000 yards as as a senior, almost 2,000 yards as a senior running back, had over 1,000 yards receiving as a junior receiver. And this kid's a football player. He's just raw. And we saw that, like, the first time Prince got on the field this year as a linebacker, I was like, he needs a lot of work. By the last time we saw him playing linebacker, like, okay, Prince, the light's starting to go on a little bit for Prince.
Exactly.
He just needs that experience. And that's why this year was really good for him, because the kid needs coached up, because he was so raw, because his head coach had to play him all over the place because he was their team. And that's not a knock on their coach. I mean, his job is to win high school football games, not help Notre Dame. You know what I mean? And so you love Prince, and he brings versatility. I think Prince is kind of more of an inside guy than Jalen Sneed, where Jalen, I think, could play some rover and some Sam and some different things. But I think Prince has really filled out his body in a way to where it's like he's kind of grown into an inside linebacker. But man, this is a really good group, Vince. I mean, and the best part about it is the 6 guys that they signed all fit exactly what Marcus Freeman wants from those positions.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you could say, like, okay, Junior doesn't have versus. Hey, Marcus Freeman picked Junior. That was one of the first offers he made was to Junior Tuiamaka, because he sees the need. Hey, you got to have a Mike on your roster that can just bump.
They're not in the Big 12, right? They're not in the Pac-12. They know that they're going to be playing teams like Michigan State, potentially Michigan,
Ohio State next year, who
State.
runs for 200 plus yards a game, Stanford.
You need a dude in the middle that's going to snot bubble some people, right? I mean, that's okay, right? And so, yeah,
and who did his team play in the last time he coached Cincinnati? Georgia.
Yeah.
You know, and he had to commit all these resources to stopping the run that it left them exposed to one-on-ones at the outside. So they held Georgia to 46 rushing yards, but they gave up over 400 passing yards.
Right.
When you have a guy like Junior Tuiamaka, you don't necessarily have to overcommit resources, because you trust him to say, "Hey, Junior, if I don't want Georgia getting their, they better not hit a big run in between the tackles. That's on you." Yep. Right? I mean, you want that kind of player. You need that kind of player, and Junior is that kind of player. So
you have to be versatile in this age of defense. You can't just roll out your 4-3 and go no matter what offense you're running up against. Like, this isn't that anymore. This isn't 1985, right? I mean, you have to be versatile. And so,
again, where like everybody in the Big Ten is playing the same offense,
right?
I mean,
yeah, exactly.
So when I look at this group, Vince, I see a Prince Colley that could be a Mike or a Will. I see Jalen Sneed, who could really play any position, but preferences is Will and Rover. Josh Burnham is a Will and a Mike. Could end up, I mean, he's so long and thick that who knows, he ends up kind of being a hybrid Viper kind of player.
That's exactly what I was thinking too. Yeah.
And then you got Nolanziegler, who is a rover. I mean, a rangy athletic rover who also has the frame that maybe he could grow into a Will. Junior's that Mike that could do some third down pass rushing as well. There's a lot of length and athleticism. I mean, and it's hard to kind of just do justice to breaking down these kids because they all bring such skill. I mean, Nolanziegler this year had 25 receiving touchdowns.
Crazy.
Receiving touchdowns as a receiver. He had over 1,300 yards receiving this year for his high school team. There was a play he made. They played against Andrean, right? Did I say that correctly? Andrean.
Yes,
they
sir.
played against Drake Bowen's team. Nolanziegler was the best player on the field that day. I mean, yes, Drake Bowen's a 5-star recruit, but it wasn't even close to who the best player on the field was that day. It was Nolan. There was a play he made where he picked off a bubble screen and ran it back to the house. That's how instinctive and twitchy that kid is. I mean, that is you just you don't see that kind of thing very often.
What high school did he go to? Ziegler?
He went to Grand Rapids Catholic Central.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And they won, I think, their second or third straight state title this year, and it's all been on the back of Nolan.
Yeah,
I believe I was talking to his dad, and I believe Nolan is one of only 2 players that was on the whatever the dream team is in Michigan, whatever they have, that dream team or whatever. He was the only guy to be on it 2 years in a row. Like Burnham wasn't on it as a junior. Josh Burnham wasn't. Like Nolan was the only one because he's been such a great player. And then you got Josh Burnham is the Gatorade Player of the Year in the state of Michigan this year. Also had a monster year. You're talking about a quarterback that a linebacker that's 6'4", 215 pounds that rushed for over 1,500 yards and 20-plus touchdowns this year and had over 100 tackles and over 10 tackles for loss. I mean, you're talking about a special, freaky athlete. Jalen Sneed is a quarterback, rushed for over 800 yards and over 10 touchdowns as a quarterback. That's the thing about these kids is they're not just athletic, they're really athletic and you hope they can learn to play football. These kids are football players. Now, they need harnessed in regards to the technique because they are doing so much.
Exactly.
But think about this. You have 4 linebackers in the last 2 years that were either 1,000-yard receivers or 1,000-yard rushers in high school. And one guy did both. Prince Collie did both. He was a 1,000-yard receiver.
Show up in my locker room.
I know, right?
Come on, man.
Well, and in fairness, nobody else in South Bend has that either. So
no, that's true, but still.
But I mean, that's just what makes this group so much fun and so excited to talk about. Because it's just they're just athletic. Yes, they're athletic and they're rangy and they're toolsy, but they're just football players.
Yeah, and they could be so good as just focused on being a linebacker as opposed to doing everything else, right?
Yeah, Junior's the only one that's been a full-time defensive player in his career.
Yeah.
And he had 120-some tackles this year and like 14 tackles for loss or something like that. I mean, just the production is there. That's the other thing, Vince, that we don't often get to talk about. And Keanu Kia, to me, is still a big mystery because he didn't play his senior year because of COVID. And I mean, so it's like he's still a bit of a mystery. That apparently, they really like him.
Yeah.
You know, he impressed a lot of people, but he's still, to me, an unknown. And we have to evaluate it based on where they were as high school players. We didn't see him pass his junior year when he was like barely 200 pounds. But the thing is you just look at this group and it checks. There's literally not a box that checks except maybe, you know, because even then, like you say, well, you know, maybe you needed another guy numbers wise, but then you start getting into that hole. You're bringing in too many in a 2-year span where you can't play everybody.
Right.
And then guys leave. Right now, this group of 6, you can play all 6 of them in a game.
Yep.
As part of a rotation, you know, and that means it's going to be easier to keep them happy and keep them engaged and keep them locked in. And that's going to be an important thing too. Now, some of them will play early, some of them won't, but the future is there for them all to be able to play. And honestly, there's not a single one of these linebackers that I'm redshirting this year. No. If Junior's not ready to play linebacker, that's fine. Put him on kick return, put him on kickoff, and you know, same thing with Nolan. I mean, it's tempting to want to redshirt these guys, but so few of these guys are going to end up being 5-year players. I mean, the only one that I would consider redshirting is probably be Nolan, just because I think that, you know, with his love for Notre Dame, maybe you have a better chance of convincing him for a 5th year. Plus, you look at the roster ahead of him. Do you want to maybe space it out to where, you know, Jack Kaiser's a senior when he's a freshman, and then Jack's a 5th when Nolan's a redshirt freshman, and then when Jack leaves, you know, then Nolan's got, you know, I mean, so but then it's like, but if you're the special teams coordinator, like, wait a minute, hold on, you're taking that guy away from me? Hold on a second, time out. Like that kid could be one of my best cover guys,
right?
And so it's going to be a really interesting decision to see if they are able to choose to redshirt any of them, but. You know, again, if you're going to talk about special teams is just as important as everything else, and you get your best athletes, how are you going to justify not playing all 6 of those kids on special teams next year?
Yeah,
and so that's the other thing that we don't often talk about. Their opportunity for great coverage and return units is enhanced by a group like this as well. And I have a friend of mine who is he's not at the school anymore, but he was at a school that coached against Notre Dame in 2020. And again in 2018, when Notre Dame had some really good coverage units. And I was like, you know, what makes them so good? He's like, you know, there's nothing they do schematically that we can't prepare for. He's like, but they got a bunch of 230-pound kids running 4.5s coming at us. He's like, there's just nothing we can do about it. You know, because Notre Dame you had the Jack Lambs, you had the Bo Bowers, you had, you know, guys like that. And it's just like, Sidek Wanu before his injury. And it's just like, there's nothing you can do about it. When a kid 230+ pounds is running a 4.5 at you, and you're, you know, unless you're Bama and you've got your own set of, you know, it's just like, okay, this is exactly. Exactly. That's it. That's all you do. And that's pretty much what they did in 2020 against Notre Dame. It was just like fair catch, you know, but I mean, and that's only going to continue and then some, in my opinion. And because like they had a great 2-year haul in 18 and 19, which is what they used to justify not recruiting the position in 20 and to a degree 21. But this group is even better than that group, in my opinion.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
Because that group was more athletic guys that you weren't sure if they were football players. This group is football players.
Yeah.
And that's what excites you about it.
It's fun. this is going to be a fun group to watch and keep an eye on. No question about it.